All right, we are live. And I am going to wait a few seconds to make sure that StreamYard and YouTube are talking to one another. There we go. They are talking to each other. So it looks like we're broadcasting. So welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. I'm your host, Ed Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be I'm finishing up a third part of a reaction to a video by Paulogia, where he is talking about Habermas's third volume and how the word survey didn't mean what he thought it meant. And part one, we kind of went into that about how Habermas misdirected us all into thinking something was there that wasn't there. And then last time I talked at length about how I think this is setting Christians up to be more and more accepting of presuppositionalist apologetics. And today I'm going to finish it up because we're kind of in there. But just a few announcements before we get there, and we'll do our roll call and see who's here. If you are a member of the channel, you should have a few new emojis in there. We're testing those. They're all Fangs related, and I Killed Earl's been hard at work. I know she's at the tattoo parlor right now. I'm getting a new tattoo, so she will be along shortly as soon as she's done with that. So, so there's that aspect of it. So I think, let me show some of them off. The first one she actually sent me was this one, which is Fangs with some sea cucumbers and his fin hat, being adorable as always. Then there's this one that came up with the whale, which I debuted, I think, last live stream. So she's been at work with this one. And then this one she just sent to me. So there's already some controversy as to who Jesus's father really is. So is it Joseph or Fangs, or I don't know. I don't know. The more heresies we get, the better, the more fun it is for me. So, and then she just sent me this one. There's actually 3 variants of this one. For Fang's sake, but so there's that. But yeah, so we got this latest one coming out hopefully soon. But she's been experimenting with a lot of the resources of the program that she has. So she's been trying to do it. So, but yeah, there's about 3 variants of this, and I'm still debating which one I'm laughing at the most. So we'll see what happens there. So we have a few new emojis for you to try out. I think readability might be an issue, but we'll keep going with it. So there's that. But yes, so we have For Fang's Sake and a few others. And so that's kind of what she's been up to. And that's kind of the update where the emojis are. We're testing a few of them out. So you've got those in your chat. So you're more than welcome to use them. So there's that aspect of it. So if you want to test those out tonight, we'd be greatly appreciative. And any feedback you want to give, that's also appreciated. We love it. So there's also a goal in chat for what hat I'll wear tonight. If we reach the chat goal, that's when it'll happen. We already have one, which I need to highlight right now. Also, to let everybody know, Fred is indeed here. And thanks, Fred. I appreciate the support. Doctor in philosophy, a master's in philosophical theology, and utterly incapable of stepping out of his theist box. Okay, so there we go. It's a pretty good synopsis so far of what's going on with Paulogia and Larry Habermas. I think, honestly, it's one of those interesting conflicts. You have this supposedly heavyweight in apologetics, and he's bothered by a YouTuber that actually who's uneducated in the field, who can actually point out the problems with his stuff far better than anybody else. I think it bothers the hell out of him. I think that's what it really is. But there we go. So Fred is here. Let's see who else is here. John. It's actually the second one here from Holland. Welcome. Earl is here, but not here. She's getting a tattoo done. It's supposed to be done soon. So there's that aspect. Azo is here. Martin is here. So Katie is here. Just saw Katie over at the Captive Desk and Saturday Night at the Atheist. So there's that. Anne is here. Cranky Elder God says he's not here, but managed to type stuff. So he's not here. He's hanging in the corner. It's what he does. Evan is here. Good to see Evan. Alex is here. Decibel 19. Well, actually, Decibel, the official doctrine about Fangs is sexual orientation and gender is that he tends to morph into whatever the person considering him is. So if I refer to him as a he because I am a heterosexual male. And so I'm definitely there. But if somebody else wants to refer to Fangs, like if a lesbian refers to a Fangs as a she and is also still after females, then that's also legit too. He's completely orientation, gender fluid. So whatever that, and that's by design, so that he can be more empathic with you as he nibbles on your heart. So he's all about nibbling on your heart, and consensual nibbling, by the way, not forcing any nibbling on anybody. So, hey, Diva, it's good to see you. Yeah, that's perfectly legit, Evan. Yeah, to referring Fangs as his most male wibbly wobbliness. Yes. That's legit. So, yes, and make sure you guys hit the like button, share the video, do the things you guys do. But I'm going to pull up, I want to say probably 70% through Paul's video. And I'm going to pull him up here, and I got to pause him. But we're about 33 minutes into it, and it's got about 10. But I wanted to save this last part because I think an additional point can be made about some of these apologists that are supporting Gary Habermas. Right now in this video, he's kind of going, he's reacting to something where the stream is going around the room and asking, what is the most surprising thing you found in this book? And there's been like his research assistant, but yeah, the bunny math is awesome. Either way, it doesn't matter. Okay, so, this was kind of a celebratory moment for Habermas because he's finished his third book, and there's only one left, which is supposed to be his personal musings, which are useless to the discussion of the historicity of the resurrection, but we're going to have them anyway. He's kind of going around the room, and we've been reacting to some of them in like his research says, I can't believe how heavy these books are, and they're trying to win by page count and all that stuff. So, one new fresh hell. We're going to finish up good old Paulogia's video with Habermas. There's one of the guys that is going to say what the most surprising thing. I want to talk about an issue that he presents, because he's one of those guys that has rejected he has rejected some elements of supernaturalism in the Bible. And so I have a question for that person. But so, here we go. We're going to see. Paul is here. I'm going to back this up just a tad because I want Paul to reiterate a point for me. So there we go.
Reason to believe in something like that.
Naturalistic hypotheses don't require an anti-supernatural worldview to be considered the most likely explanation for the origin of Christianity. The entire case is based on alleged testimony, and testimony alone is always going to be more likely to be mistaken or a lie than to affirm something supernatural. That sentence is true even if you 100% believe in the supernatural and miracles. It's not flat denial. It's just requiring something more than testimony.
Yes, I want to reiterate that too. Like, this is the evidence that critics and skeptics are looking for is perfectly reasonable given the extraordinary nature of the claim. Okay, it's not we're not dismissing the supernatural. What we're saying is you better have damn better evidence than a naturalistic explanation can provide. I also want to clarify something because it comes up often when we talk about naturalistic explanations for the resurrection, is that these people are saying this is what happened. Paul, in his minimal witnesses theory, is not saying this is what happened. What he is saying is this is a possibility that could happen, makes perfect sense, and doesn't require a miracle. Okay, like the actual thing that he responds to is how do you explain the church's phenomenal growth in the early years, which is, I think, one of those things Habermas thinks is really important. But it's like he breaks it down and says this is very easily explainable based on a couple of witnesses who sincerely believed that Jesus was risen from the dead. Whether Jesus actually rose from the dead is irrelevant. I personally think, as somebody who's a former Pentecostal, a lot more happened than that, because I've watched human behavior about supernatural claims right up front row seat. Okay, when I had people claim miracles in my church, you would have people that just basically, say something happened to them, then all of a sudden other people are saying that they had that same experience happen to them. You have people that are just have influence in the church. They have Pentecostal influence in my churches, and they would say something supernatural happened, and everybody would just believe them without even criticizing them. So when you take into account gullibility and the fact that people tend to follow leadership types, it makes Paul's minimal witness theory even more powerful when you consider the atmosphere that these two people are dropped in. And that's not what's going on. A lot of these theists want to dismiss naturalistic theories as just being critical. And, these naturalistic theories, you're just saying you don't have any proof that that's what happened. It's like, no, it's not a question of trying to prove what happened. You're saying there isn't another explanation, and I just gave you one. Okay. You're delving it. So there's that aspect of it. It's like, and so I think a lot of people miss that point with like naturalistic explanations, is that we're not saying this is what happened. We're saying that there is a naturalistic explanation to explain something. Okay. And if you're going to make the claim of the resurrection of Jesus Christ being true, you have to eliminate all those possibilities in order to say this is the only thing that could happen. And, that's the real problem with a lot of these. So thanks, Kevin. Oh, Black Fedora is leading tonight. So for the first time, it's been, no, there's a couple times it's led. So, hey, Native, good to see you. Man, a lot of crowd tonight. That's good. Kind of like it. All right. But let's get on to the part we haven't touched on yet.
It's too young to say we're post-resurrection, but he thinks the resurrection research has been done. It's established. Nobody's picking the major theories anymore.
Game over, man. It's game over.
People like Bach.
Okay. I said it last time. That's a very significant statement, because if in the mind of apologetics, they've already proven the resurrection, that just absolutely sets up presuppositional apologetics to start having an even bigger influence on the Christian church, which is expected, I guess. But it's like he's basically saying that the resurrection research has been done and dusted, and it's true. Okay, so if that's the case, then what's to stop the apologists from basically saying the resurrection is proven, you have to prove it isn't proven? They're going to start saying stuff like that. And from somebody who has studied ministry in the church, it's kind of the direction I expected, because they're receiving too many criticisms that are valid. So Habermas is basically, in his own mind, and I don't doubt this, and that's probably the basis for the fourth book, that in his own mind, resurrection is proven. So therefore, this is the implications of that. So what is the implication for apologetics? I think you'll see even more mainstream apologists that have usually been like reason oriented and that start to have a lot more presuppositionalism to their work, because they're going to basically say, we've proven the resurrection. You have to prove that that's wrong. And that is going to bother the hell out of me. Okay. Because they haven't done that at all. So there's that aspect of it. Oh, hey, Tux. It's a Tux sighting. All right. And then there's Kyle. So yes, this is the thing though, Fred. I think what's going to happen is Habermas's book and work are going to be looked at as, we've proven the resurrection is true. So therefore you have to prove us false. And that is such a presuppositionalist trope. It's ridiculous. But it feeds right into it. And I think that's going to be the problem going forward. It's okay. All right. The dad jokes have come out because it is Father's Day weekend for some of us. Happy Father's Day to all of you dads out there. Hopefully your children will at least acknowledge your existence and say, hey, great job, Dad. Thanks. And maybe leave you alone for the day. So there's that. I don't need help for that. All right.
And Hurtado and Tom Wright and others, they've won the day.
That's it. We did it.
We did it.
Let's say the resurrection happened. Let's say the critics have abandoned their goofy stuff.
I can assure you that I have not abandoned goofy stuff.
And let's march forward as a...
Yep, me either, because it's not goofy. What's goofy is thinking that you've won the battle as an apologist at this point about the resurrection. That's what's goofy. Okay. You're looking at the size of these volumes. You're looking at, this is the lifetime work of their chief apologist, scholar, quote unquote. As somebody pointed out, Habermas has degrees in philosophy and philosophical theology, which, to be fair, is related to resurrection research from a scholarly point of view, but it's not the field of resurrection research. I'm not really sure, the fact that this is he's not giving up goofy stuff because it's not goofy stuff. Okay. What's goofy to me is that Habermas thinks the argument is over. Like he's dismissing all this stuff as, we've already beat all these theories. We've beat all this stuff. So we can now go forward and just assume the resurrection took place. So yes, he's good. I can say, as somebody who has biblical scholar thread credibility myself, because I have a master's degree in theological studies and a BA in biblical studies, Paulogia's research is usually very, very well done, better than I could do. And, I've actually written a thesis on this stuff using research. So it's like, so dead men do not return. Yes, you have to show more evidence than that. Yes, that's the thing. All right, let's see what else they're going to say.
Kingdom.
I think I'm the only one who's ever spoken about this, but in resurrection research, nobody's ever gotten into this area in philosophy called the epistemology of testimony, where there's a reductionist position versus an anti-reductionist perspective and stuff like that.
Well, that sounds promising. Is one of you finally going to admit that it's a testimony problem and not a worldview problem?
Yes. I felt the same way when I got to this point. Before Paul spoke, I was like, oh, so you're going to admit that testimony is a problem. So you have to talk about testimony and how it's not a problem. And you're going to have to give some epistemological basis for how it's not a problem, and convince a whole bunch of, I don't know. At that point, it's like you're finally addressing the problem with resurrection research, which is the testimonial problems. Fact that the Gospels are anonymously written, they have anonymous sources that they don't cite, things like that. and we're not, and somehow we're still supposed to take them as genuine. And why should that be? So I don't think that Habermas really understands, or the people around him understand, the testimonial problem, because they don't want to. As somebody who used to be in this sort of thing, I know the emotional connections that even scholars can have to their faith, because I considered myself as somewhat of a lower level scholar who trying to figure out the resurrection. I understand the emotional connection that even people like me who are looking for proof have towards the resurrection, because as Paul says in 1 Corinthians, without it, the Christian message is void. It's like, if you don't have a resurrection of Jesus Christ, the game is over. Okay, that's the true game over. And so they're moving with the Christian assumption that they can just assume the resurrection is true. And now Habermas has given us all this stuff. That's kind of where they're headed. So there's that. Hey, Michael. Yes, I know. Expecting evidence. How dare I? What am I doing? It's all about faith.
Do we trust a source when they say something, or do we start skeptical? Is the burden of proof on them that it's true, or is it the burden on proof? And they lean towards it's true if someone makes the claim. And so, which is fine. It's hard for me to say one has to take one approach or the other, but I do think you got to start making a case either way you go.
If you mean that you need to start making a case that isn't just prima facie believing testimony, then I agree. That should be the next frontier of resurrection defense. Find a version of this that is justified beyond straight up credulity.
My bigger issue is there's a lot of concernment about saying miracles happened or addressing those sorts of things. And so if that's even in the discussion, then that kind of stops it.
Correct. Resurrection discussion just stops there. Excellent observation.
I think historians should.
Yes, this is the problem. Okay. Me and Paul are kind of agreeing here. When I heard this guy talk, and I'm like, okay, yep, he's right, because it's like, you've got to prove a lot of things to make testimonial evidence stronger. You got to prove so much. And I don't think you can do it. We have so much research about how testimonial evidence is so in error and so flawed, even if the testimony is like a day old. So it's like we're talking, an anonymous source with anonymous sources 2,000 years ago, probably more like 1900, 1800 years ago. And we're still, we're debating whether or not this testimony even comes from an eyewitness. And there's a good case against that. So it's like, there's, whether these are eyewitnesses or not, it's pretty like, yeah, when you read some of them, it's pretty clear that they weren't eyewitnesses. Like Luke is basically saying he's gathering stories that he wasn't there. The writer of Luke does. So it's like you have this problem with, and he's mentioning the miracles part. You can't just prima facie accept miracles. Okay. And I don't know where you get in your philosophy or epistemology where you just accept a miracle claim without any evidence for it. I mean, because Christians, if they go down that route to protect the resurrection of Jesus Christ, well, okay, so Vishnu lifting up a town and moving it, I have to accept that as true. I don't remember Allah flying on his camel across the sky. Like any miracle claimed by any god then becomes accepted. How does that work? Okay, because I don't think apologists realize if they start accepting certain epistemology stuff as true, what damage that does to them from other faiths, because other faiths can use that same stuff, so there's that, it's like me, myself, and I agree. Okay, there you go. Yes, you got to have evidence. Yes. So yes, Earl with the ring of power. So, so there's that. Oh, yes, my precious. Yes. But yes, I think my real problem at this point is this kid who's a PhD, who's basically Habermas's, writer for a lot of this third book, is hitting on a point. Like, how do we make testimonial evidence better? Well, on what basis can we say testimonial evidence is better? And I just don't think that you're going to get it farther, because the more research we do on observation and eyewitnesses and things like that, the worse it gets for testimonial evidence. So I don't know how you fix that. So, but that's where Paul and I agree on this one, and so does the other guy. This is where the battle line for apologetics is the real battle line is, why should I accept the gospel accounts? Because they're all testimonial evidence that's questionable in and of itself on the front. Why should I even accept that? Okay, because there's a lot of counter apologetics that just goes, I don't have to accept the gospels because we don't even know who wrote them. They could be complete fabrication, and that's a legitimate case. So it's like, prove to me that an anonymous source with anonymous sources has some historical validity. That's right where the apologetic argument is, and they never do it. Okay, and that's where the battle line is drawn. So there's that part. Let's see what else we're going to get out of this.
Be able to say miracles happen, and a lot of times you'll hear people say, "Oh, historians can't say a miracle happened. We don't have the tools." But I see a lot of historians writing about economics, about political theory, about war. Last time I checked, they weren't generals, but they're
okay. There's a great deal of difference between economic theories, which economics actually exists and we can observe it. Historical documents we can still look at. There's a lot of testimonial evidence in that, but once again, the historians scrutinize that just as hard. His idea that somehow historians aren't as hard on, say, Plato and a few other of the ancient writers. Julius Caesar did his own account of his, war in Gaul. People are critical of that stuff too. This idea that somehow they just accept those testimonial evidences, they dismiss those too a lot of times because of a lot of things. But we have several historians that have done the life of Alexander the Great. Well, in some of those, there's miraculous claims. They dismiss the miraculous claims in those too. They're consistent. Okay, and the problem, I feel like a little persecution narrative is surfacing here, that they don't want to hear our evidence because we're Christians, and it's like, no, that's not what it is. Okay, it's just not what it is. So, oh boy, evidences. Yes, that's why they pluralize it. Many times bringing a historical end up on YouTube video, I think the human brain tends to smooth over the rough of our memories. Yes. It's also true, like I was listening to Captive Desk. He had one of his guests that was explaining how the brain works too. Our brain notices differences. It doesn't necessarily, it assumes the same thing. Like if you walk into a room, it assumes the room is going to be the same unless something is different, and then it registers it and gets it through multiple layers of registering before we notice it. So it's like our brains have a tendency to go certain directions and smooth over our memories and smooth over stuff. And that is why you have to have scientific data that stays regardless of memory. Okay. And when you're getting stuff from testimonial evidence, it's somebody else's memory. So it's like, it's even worse. So yes. Yeah, I accept where history is unquestionably. Yes, I mean if you do this kind of logic on other ancient antiquities, like the problem with presuppositional apologetics is, I've said this to many presuppers many times, I can use the same tactics for any religion. Like I can presuppose Islam is true, and you have to prove it false. I can presuppose Hinduism is true, and all its claims are true until they're proven false. Okay, if I play that game, I can do it with every single religion on the planet. Okay, and the funny part is Christians don't believe in those things because they think it's ridiculous. Okay, it's like, but yeah, so there's that. Oh. Yes, I mean, like, so Troy is a city that actually existed. It doesn't mean that the mythology is true. You know, a lot of people, oh, they got the towns right. They got some of the historical figures right. Have you looked at your historical fiction section in your local bookstore? They do that too. Okay. You know, it doesn't prove a thing. The issue is, did the events actually happen? Did the people do the thing? You know, in the case of the resurrection, did Jesus actually walk out of the tomb? Like, they bring up the empty tomb so much. I talked about this last time, but the empty tomb just proves the tomb is empty. It doesn't prove that somebody walked out of there. You know, I just went today for Father's Day. Me and my mother make our annual pilgrimage, and I did this morning down to my father's graveside to, you know, fix up the flowers and do all that stuff. Mom's, you know, likes to keep the gravestone tidy and all that. If I had walked into that cemetery and saw an empty grave that had been dug, I wouldn't assume that somebody resurrected out of there. Okay, that proves nothing. It proves that there's something. You know, the tomb or the grave is empty. That isn't even a fact that proves the resurrection in and of itself. Just because a tomb is empty doesn't mean that that's the only explanation is Jesus walked out. Okay. You know, so yeah, our brains are lazy. They are. You have to really move it. Yeah, you got to tone it down a bit for Earl. She's a Southern belle. Oh, not able to encompass every piece of data embedded in my brain. Every other word I was looking for pops up an hour later. Yes, exactly. The so-called evidence wouldn't show evidence in a court of law. Yes, that's the point that me and Paul and many others have made, is if you tried to use the Gospels as evidence, they would be dismissed as hearsay, and they don't meet any of the exceptions for hearsay. Okay, they would be thrown out. You couldn't use them to establish any historical fact. And that's, you know, that's a problem. Okay, it's a problem. Yeah, I mean, the problem of evil being a Celtic polytheism is not as big of a problem, because if you're a polytheist, you have gods that are evil, and so evil is actually much more explainable. Like, you have different people with different personalities with different goals and objectives. And I'm sorry, polytheism, when you look at the world around us, makes a hell of a lot more sense than a single designer. You know, I can accept design by committee a lot easier when I look at the results. So, you know, when you have certain gods with evil objectives, that actually explains the problem of evil a lot better. So, yes, I mean, but you can presupp any religious belief. And that's an incredible weakness of presuppositional apologetics. And the fact that Habermas here is kind of opening the door to do that. Like, he's like, we've established the resurrection as a fact. My books established the resurrection as a fact. So we don't have to debate that anymore. We can just presuppose it's true. This is what the setup is. Okay, well, the problem with that is, okay, if I take any other religious claim and establish it to the level that Habermas has with the resurrection, then that's also true, and I can assume that it's true. So that's the problem with religious claims, is because if I presuppositionalize anything, I can take any religious claim and do it with it, and it's a bad tactic. So yeah, this again, Brent. By the way, Brent, I finished your video. Great stuff. Your observations are spot on. So, and I enjoyed it. These women debating God was very interesting. The atheists versus the Christians, and the whole presuppositionalism is in your too, because some of those Christian ladies were absolutely presupposing that their Bible and doctrine is true without even any evidence for that. So there's that. Shakespeare was definitely a nerd. Yeah, I can see that. Yes, that's polytheism doesn't come with this idea of perfection. And that's the problem with most monotheistic views, is that their God is perfect. So yeah, editing isn't amazing, but I got to give you credit. You did a good breakdown. Okay, it was a good breakdown of what was going on. And the whole, I mean, we're bringing up the incredulity, which is kind of fitting seeing we're talking about Habermas. Well, there we have it. Oh. So the list is long, 100% accurate. Okay.
Writing history about war. So you don't have to be a specialist in these fields to make those sorts of comments.
Maybe you don't actually understand your underlying problem here, Ben. When people say the tools of the historian can't affirm a miracle, they mean that the methods and principles used in historical research are inherently limited to evaluating natural events, those that follow regular patterns of human behavior, cause and effect, and physical laws. One doesn't.
Yes. And that's what I think a lot of apologists don't understand, that like it's historical studies is not equipped to handle a miracle claim. And so they dismiss them out of hand because there's different fields that would have to prove a miracle. Like if I was going to scientifically prove the resurrection of the dead, okay, in general, okay, that's a different field of research altogether than historical or testimonial. Is this even physically possible? What force exists that does this? This is an entirely different field than historical studies. Historical studies look at normal human behavior, normal human events, things that are regular, and a miracle by definition is outside of that. And so, yes, they're going to do that. But I'll bet that these apologists have no problem with the miracle claims around Alexander the Great being dismissed. Okay, or Homer's Odyssey and Iliad, the supernatural stuff being dismissed. They have no problem with that. But when it comes to their own book, they get defensive. Okay, and that's the problem. Okay, like historians are just not equipped to deal with this. If you're going to make a miracle claim, then you're dealing with an entirely different expertise level in order to prove a miracle is even possible. Okay, and so historians don't dismiss miracles. It's just the nature of the beast is trying to find what's historically accurate. And miracle claims require a little bit more, just a tiny bit more, I'm being sarcastic, evidence for their authenticity. If a historical writer says that, Alexander the Great was blessed by some goddess herself, I think we want to have a little bit more evidence for that than, the book, the ancient historian says so. Okay, so yes. Gen X by 4 days and so proud. Me too. Oh, and it's more than 4 days. Yes. Now, that's the thing. A perfect God, those things don't make sense. But an imperfect pantheon of gods absolutely makes sense. In their wars with others, they had casualties. So I'm bad at technology too. Don't worry. You're in good company, Bren. People don't come here for my editing skills. I'll just put it that way. It's my special power. Okay. Earl thinks I have a different superpower. I'm not so sure about either one. Here we go.
Not need to be a general to be aware that war follows regular patterns of human behavior, cause and effect, and physical laws, or to be aware that war is happening every single day and is sadly an incredibly unsurprising and mundane thing to observe. Miracles, on the other hand, are some sort of interference in regular patterns, cause and effect, and physical laws. That's the opposite, and why the tools of a historian are insufficient to determine this, no matter how sad it makes you. Just as the tools of a hockey player are insufficient to build a house. They're just the wrong tools.
The last one I plan on writing will be on the historical reliability of the Gospels. That's something I've worked on for a little bit already. I'm still working on it now. So, and reliability from a little different perspective than what has been written before. So it'd be like, well, what do we mean by the term reliable? We have to get to some.
Oh, for the love of God. Okay. I didn't see that part. What do we mean by historically reliable? Now, it's an important question to ask when you start. So if he asks that question in the first chapter of his book and he wants to define terms for discussion and he wants to ask us what we mean, I'm down with that. But if he plays a Jordan Peterson and does that later in the book, I'm going to have a fit with it. But yeah, so yeah, it seems like a Jordan Peterson moment. I don't have a problem defining terms is if we do it at the beginning of a discussion, because sometimes terms do have multiple standard meanings. And so you have to, because like when I'm having a discussion with a creationist and they want to talk about evolution being a theory, it's important to have the right definition of theory at that point. And I want to know that they're using that right definition. I want to know that that's what's going on. And so I want to make sure that's what's going on. I don't have a problem with defining terms at the beginning, but when you're in mid discussion and like, one of our streams this week, what do you mean by exists? And it came up out of the blue after I gave an example of what a falsifiable claim looks like, that all claims should be falsifiable. And all of a sudden we want to talk about existence. Well, I've just given you an example of a falsifiable claim. So that disproves your idea that all claims are unfalsifiable. So it's like and then all of a sudden we have the Jordan Peterson, well, what do you mean by exists? And it's like, that has nothing to do with the discussion about a falsifiable claim. So it solves your tattoo. Okay. Yeah, no pressure. Good luck. Yeah, you lost your keys and you found them. That's a miracle sometimes for me too. Man, I tell you, getting older sucks. It's the stuff I do, and then I can't remember why I'm doing it. Oh, so there's that. Oh, so there's that. But yes, his analogy was a good one. Using hockey sports equipment to build a house is just not the way it's done. And historians are that kind of unequipped to deal with miracle claims. Miracle claims require a different type of measurement and stuff. I'm not even sure how you would go about it. But if you're just going to accept the miraculous, then you have to accept the possibility of miraculous for any religion. That's just the way it is. So there's that. But yes.
Foundation thoughts. What do we mean by reliable? How do we quantify it? What kind of criteria do we have that will, fairly work for not only, it's got to work across the board. If we're going to talk about the Gospels, it's also got to be the same criteria we would apply to the ancient historical and biographical literature. So we're not preferring the Gospels in some kind of sense or prejudicing for their historical reliability. They've got to be fair criteria that need to be met. So that's what I want to work on.
If anyone has a chance to write a book.
Okay, I want to comment on that. The guy kind of saved himself there for me at that moment, because he's basically saying we cannot do like some sort of special pleading where we put the Gospels in some sort of different criteria that we're going to analyze them for reliability. We have to be able to use this across the board with any ancient text. We have to look and see if this is reliable. The problem is you're still trying. Why do we even need this? Well, we need it because we want to prove that the Gospels are historically reliable, but at the same time, not prove any other ancient religious texts are reliable. Good luck with that. Okay. Because I don't know if you're going to get a standardized way of looking at something and not have it also blast the Gospels as well. Like if you come up with something that dismisses the Quran as a historically reliable text, it's probably going to nail the Bible too. It's going to nail the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Apocrypha, all of it. So there's that aspect of it. Evan. I mean, I've never been able to put my keys in an intelligent place and remember where I put them at the same time. That's fair. So, you're nuts, not delusional. Okay. Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, I just credit and accept thanks to random occurrence. That's fair, right? Yeah. I see all kinds of problems with this one, but this particular scholar is the guy I wanted to talk about tonight. So he's the only one that, in my opinion, that with what he just said made a little bit of sense. Like he's like warning apologists, like if you create a criteria of testimonial reliability and only allow it to be used on Christian stuff, and don't, if it's used on other stuff and also proves them true, then that's not going to help you. So it's that kind of thing. So you've got to have a standard of evidence or of looking at testimony that allows you to elevate the Gospels to some special status without also elevating all other religious claims to that status. The problem, if they go to presuppositionalism, like I think they're headed more and more, they're going to end up doing exactly that. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see if they find a way to do that. But Paul's going to talk about this guy a little bit, and I kind of like the discussion. I'm going to back it up just a tad.
Their historical reliabilities, they've got to be fair criteria that need to be met. So that's what I want to work on.
If anyone has a chance to write a book that convinces me of gospel reliability, it's probably Mike Licona. In his previous books, he's been willing to say that Jerusalem zombies probably weren't historical. His most recent book was an excellent study explaining how features of the Gospels are best understood as literary conventions. And he's been in whole battles against the undesigned coincidences crowd.
Okay. So yes, Licona is a very interesting case, but he also makes me scratch my head. I got to get to yes. Thank you, Martin. Appreciate you. That's 3. So 2 more. And right now the black fedora is winning the hat poll. So people want to see the new feather and band on the black fedora. Numbers, legal codes, political, knowing how to use it, and my social media. Yeah, there you go. Those are the skills I have as well, Bren, just so you know. I think my editing's a little bit better than that, but yeah. Yes, wars in the Middle East are often fought over religious differences and end in bloodshed, loss of life, and that's nonsensical. Yes, that's why I've said what I've said. Like, you're asking me to take sides in a conflict that I think is nonsense on both sides. Yeah, I'm out. So, yeah, they kind of were. Yeah, the problem with the gospel writers is we don't know is the best answer of who wrote the Gospels is actually the better answer. So probably an alien invasion, and then our tribalism will kick in as a human tribe, and we'll fight that. Yes. So, but yes, and Evan and Martin did remind us all to be scared of numbers. So 6.66 donation is an evil one. You also have to be afraid of Captive Death's toast jingle too. It'll stay in your head and it drives you nuts. So, make sure you have stoppers in your ears when it comes on when you're over there. Harry Potter's your favorite. Mine too. Yes, I've often thought of myself in a different career that involved numbers and numerical stuff. And I'm like, I don't know how I'd keep track of all that shit anymore. So, so there's that. But yes, Licona is an interesting case. And he's dismissed the zombie horde as not historical. He's also dismissed large portions of the Gospels as literary devices. Like he has definitely done that as I would consider him a more liberal scholar on this issue. And he has dismissed a lot of the stuff that we laugh at. The problem I have at that point is I would have to ask him on what basis, if you're dismissing a zombie horde resurrection, why are you keeping the rest? What is the evidential standard that allows you to keep, say, the resurrection of Jesus Christ, but not the zombie horde? Why is it that the zombie horde seems more ridiculous and is a literary device, but the resurrection of Jesus is a historical event? On what, based on the bad nature of the eyewitness testimony, how do you get that distinction? And this is kind of the last point I wanted to make about this whole issue with Habermas is, on what basis then do you, given some of your criteria, do you dismiss other miraculous claims of other religions? Because if I'm taking his methodology correctly, he just ran around anything that supported his point. He wrote it down and then uses it for volume 3 as proof of something. and my issue with that is, couldn't I also do that, say, with Islam or Mormonism or Jehovah Witnesses? Couldn't I also just spend my life writing something down about their claims and then publishing a big volume and book about it? Okay. And what would that prove? Okay. I don't I don't get how that works. Like, yeah, that might be the criteria then, I think, where, only one of the gospels says it. But as I'm pointing out in my Questionable Witnesses series, that eliminates a lot of the gospels, because at that point, okay, if you're going to eliminate only things that have one gospel, okay, so Mark writes it in his gospel, and then Matthew and Luke just copy it word for word. That's not three witnesses anymore. And really, you could only say there's only one account of those events that's repeated two other times. Well, just because two cops record the eyewitness testimony of somebody, you still only get one testimony. Literally everything that makes the synoptic gospels on that criteria could also be dismissed. Okay. Birth narratives, the resurrection accounts themselves vary. So if it only appears in one gospel, a lot of the gospels disappear at that point under that criteria. So I'm still asking the question, what it is about the event of Jesus Christ walking out of the tomb that's different than a whole bunch of other people walking out of a tomb? What makes one less ridiculous than the other? What makes one not historical and a literary device and the other one historical? What's the criteria for that? And Licona, Paul and I are kind of in agreement. If Licona says something and makes a valid point, I'd probably listen to him more than any of the rest of these nonsensical guys, because he's actually criticized the gospels and realizes there's some faults to them. Whereas the rest of them, I'm not sure that they do necessarily. So it's like, yeah, just purchased a zombie sword. Okay, there you go. I acknowledge religion is made of different claims and that each claim needs to be verified on its own merits. I don't believe in souls or the afterlife, for example. Exactly. That's kind of, when people ask me, why I wear my pagan necklaces, I say, well, I'm a Stoic who follows virtue ethics for the most part, but I felt that the Stoic virtues only having 4 was a little short. So where did I get the rest of them? Norse, 9 noble virtues stuff. Because there's good statements of virtues, and it's just a personal choice. I say so, but I'm not making any historical claims with that. I'm just saying that these are good things to follow. And, you can have a religion like that. And I don't have a problem with people like that or religious people like that at all as an atheist. My issue is usually with these guys who want to sit there and make a claim of historicity. But I'm very interested to see what Licona is going to do here. Because on the one hand, he's saying a whole bunch of people rising from the dead at the moment of Jesus's crucifixion is probably a literary device and not historical. But one guy walking out of a tomb, when we have multiple different accounts that vary and contradict each other, that's okay. Okay, I want to know what the epistemological distinction is, what the historical distinction is, why one is he considers it historical, and why one of them isn't. That's the issue I have with Licona. It's like, okay, I've read some of his stuff in the past. It's like I get it, okay, but I'm gonna make this prediction that basically it's going to come down to his emotional connection with the resurrection. He needs it to have his faith, and he knows it, and so he puts it in this little box. So despite his claims about we have to apply this to everything, I'm betting money that I could look at what he's going to say on this issue and say, yeah, you're kind of doing that special pleading rocks around Jesus's resurrection and not applying the same standard to the other resurrections in the Gospels and the rest of the New Testament. So
one can't wait to read it and have Gary never consider it because it's too new.
What would be your recommendation for these who are zealous to defend the Christian faith, but they really want to start learning about the resurrection, what would be the best beginner's book, in your opinion?
This could get awkward because
Okay. I want to stop there with this could get awkward because it is going to get awkward. Best book on the resurrection besides Habermas. This is going to be fun. I'm going to leave it at there because I think each one of these people is going to bring up something and it's going to be funny. They're all going to be funny. I'll bet money. So
all the scholars on the panel have contributed to resurrection books.
An old time book, first of all. James Orr's book, The Resurrection of Jesus, a brilliant book and a brilliant treatment of naturalistic theories from 1908, as I recall.
Wow.
Wow is right. No wonder Gary didn't care about anything newer than 2015. He thinks resurrection scholarship peaked 117 years ago. This book came out 10 years before physicians started investigating shell shock, 20 years before Hans Conzelmann began isolating creedal formulas in the New Testament, 40 years before experiments on social contagion of beliefs, and 60 years before Rees made his breakthrough in grief hallucinations.
And he's got...
Okay, so yes, Paulogia does a quick overview here of some of the things that hadn't happened yet in 1908. The idea that Habermas thinks a book is written in 1908 is like the best one on dealing with naturalistic theories. There's a lot of naturalistic theories that didn't even exist in 1908. Okay, so, and that's the whole point. It's like, if you think looking at something that's well over 100 years old gives you your best case, and you're not even dealing with the modern stuff, it's like, what are you saying? Okay, if I was on this panel, I'd be like, what? Okay, if I was still a Christian, I'd be like, what? You're not even dealing with many of the naturalistic theories that are now out there. Okay, that guy didn't even deal with them because it didn't exist. Okay, so I don't know. I don't get it at all. I don't understand how you can sit there and say this is, I mean, maybe it was brilliant for its time at the time, but time is eaten away at its, how can we apply this? It just doesn't work. Okay. It's like, it's like if I went back and said, the best writing on physics, and stuff was some ancient author from, 100 years ago. Physics and other sciences have marched on in the last 125 years. Okay. And they have better explanations than they had back then. It's this infatuation that the past is somehow a better record of what we should do as humans than current stuff that keeps a lot of this religious scholarship afloat. So Monk Eastman. Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's Gary's best evidence. Yes, it is his he thinks this is the best book and the most brilliant book against naturalistic explanations of the resurrection. When, as Paul pointed out, 4 of those naturalistic explanations didn't even exist yet. So it's like, yeah. Yeah. So there's that.
2 long chapters, and maybe the most virulent comebacks from skeptics. One on hallucinations, in which he also handles objective vision, the Theodore Keim theory, but visionary views, especially hallucination. Now remember, this is 08.
How can he possibly be authoritative on hallucination before humanity even began the science on it? Well, Gary.
Yeah, I'm kind of questioning that. What that guy in 1908 did, and I'm guessing here, but there were a lot of naturalistic ideas that maybe they saw a vision or something like that, which even back then, people saw visions and claimed they saw visions all the time. And so what the naturalistic theories at the time were doing were saying, maybe maybe they just saw a vision of Jesus and not necessarily the actual Jesus. And so, yeah, you can have that very generalized theory, but now we know, like, for instance, that people that experience grief will see the loved one who has died, like 1 out of 10 of them will. And if it's a tragic death, it goes even higher. So it's like this happens. Okay, there's tons of people that experience this at every tragic death. You know, people that loved and cared about that person are even more susceptible. And we now have research on this, which we didn't have in 1908. And so what Habermas is clinging to with the whole hallucinogenic experience is that this guy's arguments against that are still valid when we know they're not. Okay, you know, something's changed. So I don't get, you know, how he thinks this is a great book. And it's like, I don't know how this 1900 book could have adequately dealt with that topic at the time when now we have so much more information about this stuff, about, you know, hallucinogenic grief experiences are fairly common. And so, yeah, so that's kind of where it's at. And for Habermas to say that this 19 is the most, you know, we hit these naturalistic periods hard back in 1908. And it's like, no, you haven't. I mean, that's kind of I'm not surprised, because Habermas has an incredulity that won't quit. Like, if he can't understand it, it must not have happened, or it's not a good explanation. So remind me of those videos where people eat expired and make them honey face. Okay, that's valid. Excuses just accept science? No, yeah, it's not going to happen. You're probably right.
Also, at least recommend something from within his lifetime? Maybe a book from one of the panelists?
And if you want to move a lot closer to the present, there are other books that have maybe better reputation.
Maybe.
Some of the books and put them down, but some of the better known ones, the better known ones on the resurrection, are not all that insightful, and I wouldn't recommend them today.
It's my book or no book at all.
You know,
valid point. It's like he's struggling to actually put up something modern because he doesn't want the competition for his own book. I'm sorry, I kind of have that feeling too. Like, if he starts mentioning other shorter books on the resurrection, they're going to sell better because they're shorter. Okay, it's like Habermas is really having a struggle here, because he's like, I don't want to mention other names because I'm trying to hawk mine, and and so you know, it's like he can't cite some other sources that are good resurrection books because he's trying to sell his own. So there's that. Yeah, there's that. The Oracle of Delphi definitely had some experiences, but that cave did that to everybody pretty much. So everybody had experiences when they went there. So yeah, he doesn't present anything new. When I read the table of contents of his arguments for the resurrection, I'm like, I've seen all these. Like, I've already debunked all these, and I've shown how they're not good evidence. I don't understand. And then his responses to naturalistic explanations, I've seen all those too. And once again, shows a poor understanding of what they're doing. So there's that.
it's always in danger when you start naming people and folks are sitting here.
Indeed.
By the way, Sean, I just saw your book cited yesterday by a critic who says only here are the most 4 apostles we have good data for. And so why do you say this about the 12?
Is he talking about me again? Or was this some in-person conversation he had? The wording doesn't make sense either way. But I did just put out a Disciple Martyr video as this posted that matches the description.
When I say you never heard me say the other.
Yes, but I say that too, Paul. You know, it's not, I know they're probably picking on you, Paul, because they think you're low-hanging fruit. They don't come to me because I would say, yeah, okay, how do you even justify this claim anymore if only 1/3 of your your cast of 12 apostles can even be verified and as to even have existing, and none of them have recanting stories. None of them are shown to have died for their faith. Those four, I mean, the claim that any of them died for their faith is questionable at best. And, you know, they pick on Paul here because he doesn't have the academic creds. Well, I do. Okay. And I'm saying, yeah, that's a big problem. Okay. And anybody who doesn't want to acknowledge that problem, they're just sticking their head in the sand. And McDowell is kind of guilty of that. Like I'm glad McDowell got out there and said, yeah, we shouldn't be making this claim that all 12 apostles died for their faith because it's not backed up historically. I can applaud him for that, but it's like, dude, you don't seem to realize the implications of that. Like a whole lot of is assumed about Christianity because of that belief, like everybody died for their faith. And if that goes, then there's a lot of assumptions behind the Gospels that also go. And so it's like, you know, kudos for acknowledging that one of the arguments apologists standardly use is bullshit. But at the same time, I don't think he's recognized the level of bullshit. So it's like, okay. So there's that. So yeah, it's just, you know, and he's mentioning Sean. So, but yeah.
The 12 are provable. I try to tell my students never to say that.
What you need to stop inferring through deliberately vague language is that all 12 saw risen Jesus and proclaimed he was alive. Can you stop doing that?
Yes, exactly. Because it's not just the assumption that they died for the faith. It's the assumption that they all saw risen Jesus and began to proclaim that message. That's not even evidenced in the Gospels themselves necessarily. Like even if you add the book of Acts, you don't have accounts of other apostles preaching. In fact, what you get is like Peter and John. You also get basically a deacon, a couple of deacons that do it, Stephen and Philip. Those aren't apostles, okay? You get a little bit of Paul, a self-proclaimed apostle who becomes an apostle to the Gentiles because he says so. Okay, you don't get the other 12 apostles in the book of Acts. It's one of the most, Acts of the Apostles is the most misnamed book of all time because there's only one actual apostle in it that actually does anything really, or two if you count Peter and John, and the rest of them aren't even in it. Okay, and you have a self-proclaimed apostle to the Gentiles and Paul, so you got three apostles. It's not even the Acts of the Apostles, the Acts of the Apostles and company. Okay, it really is. So yeah, I don't get this one at this point because it's like he's, you know, the implications of the 12 apostles isn't just that they didn't die for their faith. It's there's no evidence of them actually preaching the gospel either. Okay, and that's a big problem. Okay, that they believe that they saw risen Jesus. It's why Bart Ehrman can go along and propose, isn't it interesting that so many of them, even after seeing risen Jesus, still doubt it? Why would you flipping doubt at that point? Okay, why? So Ringo is never mentioned. Okay, fair point. I don't think there was an apostle Ringo. They didn't have a good, Ringo's the drummer, right? They didn't have a good drummer. So religious ones are on that steroids and all. Yeah, they have a self-interest. I don't know. A lot of scholars are self-interested because they like their field, and like there have been some fields of science that have come under attack, and you can see the people that practice that science, they definitely have their self-interest too. Self-interest is kind of like one of those things that's just human. So there's that.
So why don't you listen to what Sean said in that book? Who are the ones for sure? And we've got Peter and Paul and James, the brother of Jesus.
Yep, I accept those. Tend to the minimal witness hypothesis.
But those three guys are big. Who's the most influential guys in the church? Peter and James and Paul. And right. All died for their faith? Yes, they died for their faith. They didn't recant. Nope, they didn't recant.
James was a political grudge murder, and Peter and Paul were killed by Nero as a cover-up. None of their killers cared about what they believed or whether they would recant.
Yes, that's the point. The claim that they didn't recant, you don't know that. Okay, Habermas is stating bullshit there. because he does not know whether they were given an opportunity to recant. He doesn't know any of that. That's not historically recorded. Okay. That is an assumption that he is using there. Okay. Habermas goes over the board there. And I'm glad Paul called him out on it.
Make this recanting thing a talking point if you can ever demonstrate they were given a chance to recant. Until then, it means nothing.
He was trying to say that Sean's only going to give me 3, and I said, well, pay attention to the 3 Sean gave you.
I do.
Do you think there's anybody else worth bringing back in again beyond those 3?
Great question. I have just finished a second edition, a 10-year update, and have slightly reassessed 5 of the apostles. I now think 3 of them died naturally: John, Matthew, and Philip.
Ouch, everyone. That brings it down to 9 of the 12 at even the most credulous thresholds.
I lowered down James, the son of Zebedee, in part because you said you've really got one source as reliable as it is. And I was like, you know what? Gary's right on this one. I think I'm overstating it a little bit.
Gary is the one that convinced you that acts as a single source should lower your confidence? That's amazing. Thank you, Gary.
And I don't see any prospect of another apostle moving in there that I could find.
Hey, wait a minute. Dale, if you put the shroud at 72.5 or whatever you said, what do you put the historical argument alone for the resurrection? Not your faith. Where do you put the argument for the historical argument for the resurrection? What number?
It was actually lower than the shroud. It was around in the 66%.
How much?
It was around the 66% range.
Just so I'm clear, you're 72% sure that the Shroud of Turin is real, but only 66% sure of the historical argument for the resurrection.
I just realized how funny that is, because we absolutely know that the Shroud of Turin is a forgery. We know that for sure. And to sit there and say, I don't know what method he's using to determine the historicity of something or the authenticity of something, but if he thinks that the Shroud of Turin is 72% reliable, he's very, very deluded on that. And if your resurrection claim is lower than that, yeah, you got a problem. Oh my God. Oh my goodness. This is just hilarious to me. The fact that your Habermas is even taking this as a serious argument really bothers me, because the Shroud of Turin has been examined, and the church, after a few examinations, pulled it from examination because the initial examinations are like, yeah, no, probably a piece of art, not real, not from the right time. You know, it was getting very, very clear that the Shroud of Turin was a forgery of some kind or some kind of piece of art. And yeah, and so they pulled it from scrutiny. So it's like, what do you want? You know, it's like there's zero proof that the Shroud of Turin is authentic. And so if he's placing the historicity of the resurrection lower than the Shroud of Turin, then yeah, I'll buy that, because then you're basically saying that the resurrection didn't happen either. So, but yeah, that's hilarious. I missed that the first time I watched the video, and obviously the second as well.
It was actually,
I remember you telling me over and over, Gary, I only have to get past 50, because 50 is the break-even point.
Yeah.
So if it's 52 when I'm done, I'm going to believe in the resurrection because it beats the alternative.
Wow. So Gary Habermas managed to get you to 52% sure of the resurrection. So you went all in and threw him a tribute party to thank him. In U.S. courts, they have a beyond reasonable doubt standard for criminal cases. The resurrection can't meet that. For you, Jesus needs to have his hearing as a civil case, where the lower standard is just preponderance of the evidence. Just 51% more likely true than not. That's where the resurrection is living now? I thought Gary declared resurrection the victorious worldview, and the Christians don't even need to bother defending it anymore from silly people like me.
Okay, well,
yeah, I mean, that's kind of contradictory on Habermas's part, because he's like, earlier he's saying that like this is beyond a reasonable doubt. It's like at the criminal case level. But now he's tickled pink that some guy got it up to the civil case level of the preponderance of the evidence indicates that this is most likely true. Okay, so it's like I'm not trying to be and Paul is trying to be very reserved and non-critical about this, but do you have any self-awareness at all, Mr. Habermas, about what you're saying? Because if you're sitting there suddenly saying that if somebody has something at 51% on some sort of standard that they've come up with and created themselves, and I don't even know what it is, I don't know the math behind it, that somehow because they jumped that after your book, then that's a win. Okay, whatever. Okay, it's just, I don't know. Yeah, you just have to muddying of the waters. Yes, I mean, I'm with you. I'm with you, Jake. It's like it's low bar bill all over again. Like if there's a 51% chance that this is true, then you should really go for it. And so they're just, it's Pascal's wager twisted and done. Yeah, so JC's a criminal, yes. Oh, yeah. I don't know. I'm with Paul here. This doesn't make any sense now. So you're sitting there declaring that you've proven this beyond a reasonable doubt, and then you're basically acknowledging that there's still doubt. So which is it? Okay, is it a probabilistic view, or is it an absolute certainty? So yes, yeah, I don't know, ground level Gary, that might be a good one. But to me, this is kind of like his William Lane Craig moment, and it's been recorded. Like it's like to him, if there's in his mind a percentage chance that this is more true than not, he's going to run with it. He's going to run with it. And it's like, how is this any different than low bar bill? It's not a good look. Okay. And I'm sure as hell not going to spend hundreds of dollars on a book, on a group of books that now they're in a stream basically telling me that the methodology is crap. And it doesn't matter as long as we get to this certain probability. So his gambling debt has got to be hard. Good thing he's dead and nobody can collect, you know? I don't know.
I converted overall, the positive and all the negative evidences combined. I got at 53.14% that Christianity is true. So I converted on the 53%.
Wow. The greatest resurrection scholar alive today personally took you under his wing. And after all the hours and the mentoring, you got to 53.14% chance the resurrection happened?
I just remember we went back there and you were going, I'm just aiming for a 51.
Looks like Low Bar Bill might have some company.
And I'm not kidding. I thought, if there is just one chance in a million that this is true, it's worth believing.
Oh my gosh,
And
it never gets
so
old.
my
It never gets
attitude
old.
toward this is just the opposite of Kyle's. Far from raising the bar or the epistemic standard that Christianity must meet to be believed, I lower it.
Obviously, we didn't cover everything from the Apologist Love Fest, but I think that was the high points. Thank you so much.
All right, like I want to thank Paul for doing that video. If you see this, Paul, brilliantly done as always. But yeah, I wanted to finish that up because the biggest thing that is Licona for me at the end there, because Licona has dismissed some of these things as literary devices, and it's the question that constantly dogs me with people who pick and choose which parts of the Bible are literal and history is, what's your standard? On what basis do you make that distinction? And so why is the zombie horde ridiculous and a literary device? And why is the actual resurrection of Jesus not ridiculous and historical? Can you tell me, so there's that. Yes, I was an XCOM guy too. So, I mean, I love that game. So, but yes, I guess I was more risky than you, Fred, because, if the best shot I've got out of all of them is 33%, I would take the shot, but I wouldn't count on it hitting. Yes, I had a lot of times in that game when I had nothing to lose. Yeah, I mean, but that's just it. Where is the record of the zombie horde in Rome? Okay, but it's equally absent with the resurrection of Jesus. There's no Roman record of that either. So it's like I get confused at the mentality of a lot of Christians. Like Paulogia had another guy on very recently that deconverted and then came back to Christianity. And the mentality to me is the same, where you sit there and say, I started to believe again because there's a wealth and a depth and a broadness to all of Christian thought and theology, and we don't have to be stuck in this fundamentalist apologetics vein about it. But my response to that is, if we're going on the basis of our feelings about how broad and deep Christian theology is, why not just accept all religions and look at the broadness and the depth of all religious belief? Why are you focused in on Christianity? What makes Christianity superior to the rest of them then? If you're going to play the game of what is historical and what's literary, then what is your criteria for making something historical? But also, what is the criteria that this is an important fact of Christianity, but somehow the rest of it is not as important? Like you're picking and choosing at that point what you want to be there. And that's an emotional choice. So it's like, I talked about this last time on Deconversion Hangout. It's like, what would it take to get me to come back to Christianity? Well, it'd be flipping evidence that it actually took place. The problem is I can't unsee what I have seen. And I have way too much intellectual integrity, I guess, to go back and just pull the curtain over the man behind the curtain and then pretend that he didn't exist. Okay, like if certain objections led you out of the faith, how have you answered them? And if your answer is, well, I just don't take those objections seriously anymore. I was like, well, why don't you take them seriously anymore? So it's like, it's fake stuff. I want my binky. Yes. We need our binky. I thank Earl. Earl, thank you for this emoji every day. The onion with the tears and the binky still makes me giggle every time I see it. Oh my gosh. And it's so perfect. It's such a perfect description. You have all these scholars and all these people doing this stuff, and they're still emotionally attached from their childhood or whatever to religious doctrine, to their faith. And when you challenge it, it's the same thing. It's like, please don't hurt my little fifis in the middle of all this. And it's like, dude, I'm not hurting your feelings. I'm asking you what evidence there is. And I don't understand how you consider this to be good evidence. You wouldn't consider it good evidence if another faith used it. But somehow it's good evidence. Somehow it's a good thought because it's your faith. And it's like, it's the confirmation bias. So there's Earl, this is like one of my favorites. It really is still. And I think many people in chat have also stated that they love the onions with the pinkies. It's hilarious. Oh, yes. Yes, trust me, I can only fix your problems. Yes. For me to get back, it would take God poking his head through the clouds and saying, I'm here, but I don't know. I know that's not going to happen. Yes, exactly. But yes, see, Licona puzzles me because I've read some of his stuff a ways ago. I don't know how many years ago, and I was reading some of his stuff. I'm not sure. My timeline gets fuzzy. We were talking about memory of old people earlier, and it's killing me right now. But it's like, it's puzzling to me how somebody who is a scholar can dismiss one thing as a literary device because it's ridiculous, but somehow the other thing they accept, which has the exact same thing, a resurrection of somebody from the dead, isn't ridiculous. I just don't know how they do that in their brain other than an emotional connection to the faith. And it becomes I don't want to leave this. I need my binky. I need my tears on top of my binky. I mean, this is a great, Earl, this isn't just a funny emoji. It's a great illustration of how people stay in the faith. It's like they got to have their binky in order to have their comfort zone. And a lot of the faith stuff is just based on that. When somebody challenges that, this is where they run to. I used to do it. Everybody's does it. It's just like, yes, who are you? Who? Yes, I know all the songs. I can sing them too. And in general, when I sing, people don't tell me to shut up. So I don't know why that is. I sing at work and nobody's told me to shut up yet. So, but it's probably because I give a better alternative than Walmart radio. So, I haven't heard Raining Blood by Slayer on Walmart radio yet. So, but this is still my favorite, one of my favorite ones of the Mormonians, because it illustrates so much. It's like, you got to have your binky, you got to have your emotions to keep your faith. And it's like, and they accused me of leaving the faith because of emotional reasons. I'm like, no, I know exactly what kept me in the faith, and it was emotional reasons. I just had one of those experiences today. Let me relate. I'm taking my mother down to my dad's grave because we do this every year at Father's Day, and we go and we clean things up, we fix things up, we put new stuff on. I'll probably post some pictures tomorrow that I took today for Father's Day, honoring my dad. And one of the emotional reasons that I stayed in faith so long was this absolute desire to see my father again, and this absolute desire to have one of his hugs again. That's a very powerful emotional connection that people hang on to keep their religion alive, because they have people that they loved and care for who have died, and they can't bear the thought of not being able to see them again. And so they cling to their religion because that gives them hopium. It gives you the hopium that you're going to, see those person again. The problem I have with that viewpoint is it justifies how now we don't spend time with people that we should probably spend time with. It's like religious people can literally say, they can point, well, I really should go do this for this person because it'd be the right thing to do now, but I can make it up later in the afterlife. And I'm sorry, there's far more emotional connection to keep faith than there is to leave it. Rationally, after seminary, there was so many problems with my faith that I just, it's like, I don't see it. But if you're going to sit there and tell me that I left the faith for emotional reasons, I'm sorry. If I challenge your faith and your basic response is, I don't want to give this up, because if I give up the resurrection of Jesus, then Christianity is doomed. Paul even says so in 1 Corinthians. Like, what is the point if Jesus doesn't actually rise from the dead? And if you don't have good proof of that, then he's right. Okay, it's one of the few things I agree with Paul on now, but he's absolutely right. Christianity absolutely hinges on the resurrection being true. And this is why Habermas writes his 4 volumes, because it creates this, like, even his research assistant admitted it was this emotional high he got of the weight of these books. All this proof of the resurrection has such weight to it, physical weight to it. It's like, that doesn't mean a damn thing. Okay. It doesn't mean a damn thing. It's an emotional attachment. Okay. That's very long. I made up loud, sling slowly and very gradually. Rest. Who cares about the rest? Okay. Yes, I'm sorry. I feel like life has more urgency as an atheist now, because it's also more meaningful to me. Like when I hug one of my grandchildren, Anne Marie, it means a hell of a lot to me, because I don't know when I'm going to get to do that again, if ever. Okay. It's like, you realize the fragility of life. And so you definitely kind of connect with that. And you realize that events in your life aren't going to come by again. Like, I went to the cemetery today. I stood over my father's grave. It's been almost 31 years since he died, and I still miss him. Okay. I still miss him. Okay. He was a good, strong man, and I don't want to tear up too much, but, It's like, it's one of those emotional moments for me every year. And it means more to me as an atheist because those memories are now even more important than they were before. And, I hang on to them, okay, because of that. And it's just one of those things that means a hell of a lot more to me now that I'm an atheist, because I literally said over the, I talked to my dad, but I know he can't hear me. He's dead. But it's more of me processing my thoughts about him. And I know I'll never see you again. Okay. But I try to live in a way that I remember the good things that you taught me and the good times that we had. And those things keep me going as a father myself. Okay. So it's like, it's that. And so it's like, I'm just at that point where people, they want to sit there and talk about their emotional, my emotional reasons for leaving the faith. I'm like, dude, you have far more staying in. Okay. You have far more staying in than you ever did. So there's that. Oh, look at you. See, Earl's sending me stuff. Oh, yeah. It's just, I don't know. I want to know what Licona, to me, Licona's words were far more, yeah, I also like this one too. The crying onions, they're just hilarious. But yeah, it's like there's been a bunch of these that have been done, and it's just every time, it's like, oh, that's good too. See, I'm going through these. You guys haven't seen some of these, I don't think, yet. But yeah, I can only do so many before I have to erase a few, but yeah, but we have the Binky group too. The Binky group emoji. I remember that one too. Yeah. Yeah, this one's hilarious too. Like apologists in a group when they can't have their Binky. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm doing, John. With my dad, it's like, it's every year, it's a flood of memories, and I miss my parents, my dad a lot. My mom, I took her with me, but earlier this week she kind of fell and hurt her hip. She didn't break it, but I could tell she was in pain the whole time. But it's such an important thing for her to do every year that I'm going with you. Okay, and so you can isolate the guy in the back because it's you in onion form. Oh, grumpy and tearing up. Is that what it is? Oh, gas up to the gas attacks in the chest. Yeah. Yeah, there is definitely a pain in loving, and I do miss it. Yeah, Astra, I kind of agree with you because I kind of look at it as, I know my dad isn't, some sycophant in front of God, and I know he's not roasting in hell. So to me, the finality of death is actually much more comforting to me. Like, it's over. Okay. It's comforting not only when I consider people have passed, but it's also comforting to me for myself, because it's like, yeah, it's much better. Oh, you need to find the picture of this. Yeah. Your mother has it somewhere. It's uncanny. You're a powder. Okay. I can buy that. I can buy that. Yeah, any kind of eternity would get over for a while. I mean, my last memory of my father was him giving me a hug before I got into my car and left for seminary, because I was commuting back and forth to see my family, who I moved back to Michigan. And so I was going down for 2 weeks at a time to school and then coming home. And his last thing to me, he gave me a big hug and said, "Be careful," and "I love you," and all that stuff. So we had a good parting. And then 2 days later, I got the phone call. He had had a heart attack and died. So it's like, it was sudden. And I don't know. I'm very surprised that I didn't see hallucinogenic, images of my own father, given the research, but it didn't happen. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah. So there's that. Yeah, quickly is the way to go in a lot of respects, yes. Yeah, I think an all-loving triomni God has a problem. You're right. That's my argument against it. I did a series called The Arguments Against God a long time ago. It's probably about a year now. And the one God I no longer absolutely say doesn't exist is this all-loving triomni God. You either have to get rid of one of the omnis, or you have to get rid of the all-loving part. Okay, or something has to go. If not, two of those things has to go. So yeah, it became a real problem for me in that series. But there's a lot of the arguments against God go against that omni God, and it's like there's not a lot of them against polytheism or others. It's almost like people just assume that those things are ridiculous, and it's like, I don't know, sometimes they make more sense. So I still have a problem with any deity that's not proven to exist, where you're just asserting it. So all loving. Yes, if he doesn't do all the loving things that he should do, then we humans are better at loving than he is. So yeah, it's something I've argued for a long time. Yeah, something has to give. It has to go. You either have to, okay, God's all powerful, he's all knowing, and he's all present, but he doesn't give a damn. Okay, so you have a deist God, or the way I solved it as an open theist was to diminish what it meant to be all knowing. Like he only knows things in the way that they're knowable, which gives you a restriction, which allows you to back off. Like he knows the future propositionally, but he can't know it absolutely. And that helps, but it doesn't solve all the problems. Yeah, he'd have to be observer of his own actions, John. I agree with that. And he would have to know that his actions might help some but harm others. So why wouldn't you use your omnipotence to avoid that problem? If you make an action and yeah, it benefits some but hurts others, that's not really a good action. It's like you're picking and choosing at that point. Yeah, we got two more. Running out of time for the hat. If we get the hat money, I'll stick on for another half hour or so. But I'm getting ready to head out and enjoy my other day off. So deist interpreter has always struck me as least unlikely. Still unlikely, but God that doesn't take any interest or meddle in tiny human lives. Yeah, it's like if you're a deity, why would you care? About these little humans. It's almost our ego that thinks that the gods would even care about us in the first place. So how will we be able to go on if we're hatless in the storm? I don't know. You'll make it. Oh, well, the top hat is not leading at the moment. It's actually the black fedora, which I have redecorated with a new band and a new feather, and it has not been seen yet. So we've seen the black fedora, but the black fedora modified has not been seen. So there's that. And I would even count gifted memberships for that too, but I haven't been any of that tonight either. And I want to thank those of you that done it. What's allowing us to have so many emojis is all the gifted memberships right now. So thank you all for doing that. That's been great. It's allowed me to let Earl be as creative as she wants to be and know I have room for. Yeah, it's got a new fiddler and a new band. So like it's not just a black band. Although the black band's still on it, I just covered it up with a new one. I found this thing that has like 25 different colored bands for hats, and it's got like 30 different feathers. So I bought it so I can do all kinds of stuff. Well, I mean, what can a finite being do in eternity? I think one of the best explorations of this idea I ever read was called Time Enough for Love by Robert Heinlein. He deals with his one character, Lazarus Long, who's like lived 3,500 years at that point and is so bored with life that he wants to take his own life. And so they get a supercomputer to try to figure out anything that he hasn't done. Okay. And I think they come up with 3 things, and it all involves like him, like Lazarus Long had never become a woman and had a child. So they posed that as a possibility. So he does that. And, there's a few other things that he hasn't done. And so he does the last few things that he hasn't done, and he still finds himself in the same position. So it's like, it's a deep dive on the whole issue of if you live a long time, how would you not get bored? Even if the technology, I mean, like he deals with the problems of memory with the human finite brain. Like, I mean, I'm already talking about 50 some years and I can't remember shit. What do you do with 3,500 years? Well, you have to have like computers to help you remember stuff. Okay. You have to like literally come up with memory techniques in order to remember stuff that, because you've lived so long. It's like, it gets really into why long life isn't exactly all that it's cracked up to be. So yeah, it's a great deep dive. It's a fictional story, but Robert Heinlein had a way of weaving in his themes about examining these questions in there. He does the same with like Job, A Comedy of Justice, analyzes afterlife beliefs, particularly of the Christian variety, because the main character goes to heaven because he's holy, and his girlfriend goes to hell. And so after a while in heaven, he says, it's just not heaven without her. I'd rather go to hell because he loves her so much. So it's like it analyzes a lot of those questions too. So then he goes to hell, he gets sent to hell, and then they eventually escape. So, you don't want to share space with William Lane Craig, you don't? But he's such a great guy. Here, I think this emoji is appropriate for this one. Oh, for Fang's sake. Oh my goodness. Oh, Earl, this is so precious too. I love this one. The smoking Jesus, all the Monty Python's stuff in the background. It's hilarious. Yes, the best guy to be stuck with forever. Oh, Mike Winger. Nope. I think he's worse. Some of those apologists you're mentioning, guys, are so up their own ass. I don't know how I could live with them for even a day. I mean, a lot of them have wives, and I don't know how. So he's going to be the master of ceremonies of the afterlife. He'll give a brief talk on why we're here. Another for Fang's sake. Oh my goodness. But yes, yeah, there you go, guys. You can have your for Fang's sake. We've already discussed this. You can invoke Fang's name in the place of the F word. This is a new opportunity for those of you who are students, like say in high school, because I know I get a couple of you every once in a while. You can say this instead, and they won't write you up. So just use Fang's name in place. He doesn't mind. He is the living embodiment of the fuck word, the F word. So there you go. Oh, obviously winging it with Winger. His wives are obviously abused. Earl Jordan Peterson lecture. Oh, well, Jordan Peterson recently said he didn't claim that he was a Christian, so he's going to hell. So, I mean, he's always been waffling on that one for decades. So he is going to be in hell, and maybe what Satan will do is get him to do a lecture every day. For some of us, that would be hell. So Gary Habermas in heaven reading his 4 books. There we go. He'd have to lose his place and constantly start over. Oh, for Fang's sake. Oh, yes, 22 meanings. Yeah, it's the most versatile word in the English language, I think. I think that's actually documented that in the English, the F word is the most versatile word as far as parts of speech and how it can be used of any other word in the language. So there you go. But yes, but you get in trouble for using it. So I'm trying to train myself to say Fangs instead of the F word. So for Fang's sakes, Fangs you. I can't get in trouble for it. So I mean, YouTube isn't even going to yell at Fangs. So how do you talk about fangs on critters if you can't? So yeah, well, yeah, him, Jordan Peterson. Every time he does that, I'm like, you Christians should already conclude that he's not a Christian. What do you mean by hell? Oh, you love frack? Yeah, that was the funny thing about Battlestar Galactica. That was kind of the way they got that past the censors. They just replaced the F word with frack. A lot of stuff does that. They just change it. Yeah, it's JP. Yeah, I know. It's hard to keep track of the idiots without a program. I should do a program of apologists. Here's your apologist so you can keep track. I don't know. I don't know. I may. I don't know. Oh, for Fang's sake, it might be a good title for another live stream, or changing one of my live streams to something else. Maybe for Saturdays we'll just call it "Oh, for Fang's sake," and go into the ridiculous. So, because I really consider Habermas to be kind of ridiculous with his claims. So, like, I've proven the resurrection, and it's like, no, you haven't. Long way. And you haven't dismissed all naturalistic ones either. So still haven't done that either. So, but oh, for Fang's sake, there you go. Or at least I could make oh, for Fang's sake one of the parts of a live stream. But not frack you. More guys. I only see the content in atheist commentary. Peterson ruins my sense of fun and wordplay, not to mention my philosophical soul. Yeah, he does have that problem. I was struck, okay, like he just did the, Christian versus 20 atheists, and then it became Jordan Peterson versus 20 atheists because of the one scene where he basically denies being a Christian. I never said I was a Christian. And the response from the one guy, well, you're a real smart ass. And the guy goes back, yeah, but you're real nothing. You haven't claimed to be anything. What are you? And heart music. See, I could buy a Heaven, Anne Marie, where all my favorite bands, the artists that have died, get to play in concerts all the time. and I get to go. Okay. So yeah, I mean, like, hearing some of my favorite performers perform again that have gone and no longer perform because they're dead, seeing them all again and performing, yeah, I could do that, so yeah, this really isn't. Yeah, he has a lack of self-awareness on that, Evan, because he called that kid a smartass, and I'm like, dude, you're a smartass. Yeah, I would go to Analyst's favorite rock car stuff. I'm just saying, if you're going to do a heaven, can we have like AC/DC in their prime? Can we have Iron Maiden in their prime? Can we have, Queen with Freddie at the, behind the vocals again? Can we, there's a whole list of people that no longer perform because they've gotten too old or they're dead. I would do that. That would be a good version of heaven, but you would eventually come to the end of that too. So it's like, yeah, Bon Scott. Yeah. I mean, all of this stuff, it's like, I would rather go to that, than anything else, so like Eddie Van Halen not being a jerk, but still being a good guitar player. Yeah, Jung's kind of has some BS too. I mean, the problem with early psychology is it's very theoretical. The more they do neurology, it becomes less and less theoretical. So Beast Wars had a lot of customers for a kid's show. Yes. Yeah, he called them all smartasses because that whole thing, and I couldn't watch the whole thing. There were many people that commented that they couldn't watch the whole thing because it was such a bad train wreck for Jordan. But he literally had the attitude of, I'm the elder statesman here, and all the rest of you are just young smartasses who don't know anything about anything. Okay. And he went in with that attitude, and that's why he lost. Okay. Because he didn't take them seriously. I couldn't watch more than a couple of the people, and I'm like, okay, JP is just doing JP shit. I can almost predict what he's going to do for anything that's said. But I thought the first guy did an excellent job at kind of cornering him on stuff. But then Jordan Peterson does what he always does. He changes the subject, or he moves on to something else that's more comfortable for him to talk about, and he doesn't like to talk about what he's actually asked. So, yes, that's another for Fang's sake. I'm going to create this as a segment of all my streams now at the end for Fang's sake. Is there any for Fang's sakes out there? And some of you can get it in the chat and tell me some of them. So, yes, I get my best ideas when I'm streaming, and I think that's a good one. We're going to just, for Fang's sake, at the end of every stream, because there's always a lot of stuff to say that about. Oh, yes. Laurence Olivier doing Hamlet. Hell, I'd even take Richard III with Shakespeare directing. That would be awesome. See, this is the thing. My version of heaven, if I'm going to create a heaven, is a very humanist heaven. Like, give me all the great artists, performers, stuff that made us over the years, made me think it's worth being a human being, and having them live again, having them there. Okay. To me, that would be heaven. But I am fairly certain that some of my favorite people that I would want to do that are roasting in the pits of hell if Christianity is true. So I'm torn. So yes, what about the free will of the artist? Yes. Yeah, that becomes a problem, doesn't it? I get it. I mean, my whole thing, okay, to me, there's just, like when I was a kid and I listened to Mozart, and my autistic brain started wrapping my head around all the musical crap he was doing. It was just like, it was ear candy to me, like what he was doing with all these different instruments. And I was just like, damn. Yeah. I mean, to me, going to a live Mozart concert directed by Mozart himself, okay, would be a good candidate for being in heaven. But I am fairly certain that Mozart, based on Christian standards, is roasting in hell. Okay. He's not there. Beethoven is there, but I don't consider Beethoven's good, but I don't consider him at a Mozart level. So that's just me. That's my opinion. Don't crucify me for my opinion. But, it's like a humanist heaven. It's like, for me, it's, getting to hear some of those 1960s and 70s groups that are no longer existent because all the members are either dead or dying, getting to hear them play again, okay, and do it live. It's like, I'd rather hear that. So okay, there you go. But yeah, but I'm just to me, that idea of a humanist heaven, like where human beings express what it means to be human, and then having that around again, to like have that as a panoramic, throughout time, where human beings have like expressed it in such a way that it makes it easier to be a human, you know what I'm saying? Or more understandable. To me, that would be a better version of heaven, like, and even like lost artists, like people that nobody's ever heard of because they just disappeared into historical obscurity, but they actually were really good. That would be interesting to see. So nobody gets harmed. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think when I first heard, my mom was a big one when I was little of doing the classics. Okay. And she got really offended when I said, I blame you for me loving metal. And she's like, what? What do you mean? That stuff's god awful. Have you listened to it, Mom? It's doing the same thing that Mozart and Beethoven and Bach and Brahms do, only it's doing it with electric guitars and drums and basses and doing it faster. It's the same shit. So, but yeah. Oh, so, okay. Man, see, you've created a temptation in me, Jocks, to make Fangsolatry have a specific number of people that actually is going to make it. But I don't think that Fangs is that kind of deity. Yeah, it's, like when I listen to like the old Metallica with Cliff Burton, you can tell Cliff Burton, the bassist, is classically trained because of what he's doing. Like he knows how to hook people. Like he has some of the most amazing bass work of any heavy metal band. It's like in Metallica's early days. And it's like, you hear that and, all of his stuff, he even has a bass solo as one of them from Kill 'Em All. And it's just like, holy crap, that's a bass. And you can tell, like the lead singer for Iron Maiden, classically trained opera, it's like, who has been trained in this stuff, and they immediately go into heavy metal because they know if they stay in classical, they're going to die poor and broke, and lonely, but if you become the lead singer of a heavy metal band, you're probably going to be better off. So yeah, exactly. Just deconvert one, it won't be worth it. Oh, I don't know. I like our deity. I like Fangs. He illustrates so many things for me, and he's so doggone cute. I mean, come on. Here. I mean, how can you look at this face and resist? I don't get it. He's just so doggone cute. I got to give Earl many head pats for this version of Fangs. It's just, oh my goodness. He's just a cute little guy and nibbles on your heart in more ways than one, and offers consensual nibbling, and has his own commandments that are more about your benefit than his, on and on the list goes. And, he of all the deities that I've ever created in any of my fiction, it's like, he is the cutest, the absolute cutest. Yeah, definitely take a bow, Earl. That was classic. He reminds you of Chucky. Well, we struggled because I use that term compassionate anti-theist all the time because I really am. When theists come here, I don't feel any hatred or animosity toward them. I know sometimes that may be hard to believe. I just feel pity for them. And so the idea of a symbol of a rabbit with fangs, like you see the earlier versions of fangs, it's kind of horror story, like gothic horror versions. And it's like, how do I convey the idea that I'm not here to hurt you while still giving the rabbit fangs? Okay, and here we go. So there's that. Oh. Oh, the whale joke never ends. Oh, yes, we're glad you're here, Mom. Hey, Dave, I was over to your place earlier. You have created a devil jingle. You're going to hell, Dave. Oh. Ooh. Oh, man. Decibel. These are like many of my favorite bands. Black Sabbath. I'm really getting to Black Sabbath again these days. Man, how appropriate is War Pigs again from a lyrical standpoint? Oh my God. I feel like we're heading that way again. God damn it. I thought we were going to actually give peace a chance. So, they're starting to request it. What is wrong with them? Don't get me wrong. I love the toast thing, Dave. But oh my God, that jingle gets stuck in my head. We love toast. I'm like, oh my God. I'll walk into the kitchen, Dave, and I'll start singing it. I'm like, what the hell are you doing, Ed? If you don't know what I'm talking about, go overhead, subscribe to Captive Desk, and hit one of his live streams on Saturday Night of the Atheist, and you will hear the jingle for We Love Toast. And you will know exactly why Captive Desk Dave is going to hell. It's kind of the same reason I'm going to hell, because of Fangs, the cute vampiric bunny deity. Everybody loves Fangs, and I'm going to hell for it. And Earl's going to hell for it, for making the artistic rendering. We're all going to hell for what we have done over the last few months. Yeah, I know. You guys are getting good. I get 300 people, but it usually takes about, I don't know, probably a week or so, people watching it later. So, yeah, I mean, I'm down with it. Don't get me wrong. All the fun people are in hell. Like we're talking humanist heaven, and we might as well just say humanist heaven equals hell to other people. We might as well just say that. I seriously, if I have all eternity, I would like some time with, Samuel Clemens would be an interesting guy to talk to, but I'm sure he's in hell. There's just you got to think about it. Like the vast majority of people must be in hell given the high standards to get into heaven. So why worry? There you go. Why worry? Alfred E. Newman. Now that you mentioned Alfred E. Newman, Fangs does kind of have that little bit of a look to his face, doesn't he? He definitely does have the what me worry, or oops, you just caught me, or yeah. Yes, we're the very best people. Captive Desk has the best people. And the funny thing is I see you guys over there, and I see you over here, and it's like, we all attract the best people, don't we? Oh yeah, there's a lot of bands. Oh man, some of those I don't know. The thing about it is, I got to grow up when metal was satanic, and so is it still satanic? I don't know. Is metal still satanic? I don't know, because back when I was growing up, like the Peters brothers were just out everywhere, going to church after church and talking about the satanic beat, inspired by African drums. No racism there, and that's why good Christian boys and girls shouldn't listen. So everything is satanic to the weak. Okay, there we go. I know it never wasn't. I'm just pointing it out. It's like it was just one of those weird times when I look back at it, like, the Satan scare or the satanic scare, like it was a real thing back in the day. And it was like, oh my God. Yeah, everybody, that's the problem I have with it, Ronald. It's when I point that out to them, like, you all think you have the secret of getting through the eye of the needle and getting to heaven, and that all the people that you love and care for are going there too. It's one of the things that shows how emotional afterlife beliefs are. It really is. It never wasn't. Okay, well, there we go. Oh man, but what a cute deity we've created. I marvel and awe at the cute deity that we have created. And Earl did this what the fuck one too. Well, what the fangs, actually. So kind of like that one too. Earl's been playing with a lot of things, and our Lord Fangs is inspiring her in all different kinds of directions. So, and I appreciate that. So, and some of you have new emojis because of it. So there you go. Oh. Yeah. All right, folks. That is one of the heresies that Fangs is Jesus's dad. I put out a call for more heresies to debunk, and that was one of them. See, we don't even really know who Fangs' other parent is. We have one parent in Lisa the Rainbow Giraffe is one of Fangs' parents, allegedly. And according to Cranky Elder God, he was uniquely created in the fact that Lisa the Rainbow Giraffe does something unique with her neck during intercourse that resulted in fangs. So, yeah, heresies are good for what ail is. So, but we don't know who the other deity is. So the other deity is a mystery. So, according to Cranky Elder God, what stays at the barn party, what happens at the deity barn party stays there. So he's not saying. So, and I love that about Cranky Elder God. It gives me enough mystery to play with. It's possible in some other realm that Fangs actually is the person, the father and mother of all the deities, really. So it's quite possible. I mean, we're going to take over. We got to find doctrines that allow us to take over. So, yes. I try to have fun, Fred, but I also like to make you think. I'm really trying to up the entertainment part of what I do, because I realized a long time ago as a pastor that dry sermons that are just information, nobody listens to. But if you throw some entertainment in with it, people, so there's that. Quite possible that Jesus's mom was a Playboy bunny. That's possible. It's if we can connect it with Fangsology, so there you go. This is how this works. Well, folks, I'm going to call it a night. I'm getting tired. And you love toast. So yes, and if you get a chance, go over to Captive Desk if you haven't already and subscribe there. And Saturday Night at the Atheist is usually pretty fun, and he has some good emojis too. So make sure you head over there. So yes, Marilyn Monroe. as Jesus's mother. The real Mary is Marilyn Monroe. I can buy that. That'll sell. See you guys. I appreciate all of you. May Flangs bless you all. May he nibble on your heart. May he do all the things that he can do to you. Make sure you're doing all your nibbling consensually. Make sure you're circumcising all those carrots. The doctrinal list grows long, so we're going to have to probably next week establish the firm crookedity of some more of Fang's doctrine. So that's probably what we're heading for next week. So thanks everybody for stopping by. You know, he nibbled for your sins. So keep honoring the atheist God Fangs, who doesn't believe in himself. So there's that. So thank you all for coming by, and appreciate all of you. You know, and from me and from Earl, who has designed a lot of my artwork, thank all of you for your appreciation of it. So it's like it's a good thing, and I enjoy it every time. So thanks. But as always, live your best life. You only get one go around, and then it's over. So you want to make sure you take all your time, money, and opportunities and give them to yourself, the people you love and care for, and to make this a better world. You'll be happier if you do. And don't waste them on the trappings of religion and faith, because that's a dead end. I speak from experience. And as always, thanks for stopping by, and I will catch you all next time.